Hey everyone, and welcome back to Mighty Habits. I'm your host, Steven. And today we're going to be taking a deep dive into something pretty fascinating. The way that faith and survival kind of come together, all inspired by the latest book from Mitch Albom. You might know him from Tuesdays with Maury, but this one takes us in a completely different direction. And I think it's going to be both captivating and thought-provoking for you. Just imagine this, all right? You're one of the few people who survived a shipwreck. You're clinging to life out there in the middle of a vast ocean, just on a tiny little lifeboat hoping against hope for rescue. And then seemingly out of thin air, a stranger just appears on the boat, claiming to be the answer to your prayers. That, my friends, is the setup for Albom's new novel. And let me tell you, it's a real page-turner. What I find so interesting is how Albom uses this crazy scenario to really explore what faith is all about. When you're faced with these impossible odds, do you hold on to your beliefs even tighter? Or do you start to question everything you thought you knew? Or does something totally new just emerge from all that despair? Albom started out as a sports writer, which is kind of crazy to think about. I mean, it's a long way from writing these really moving stories about, like, the human spirit. But, that background actually comes into play in this book in a really fascinating way. So in The Stranger in the Lifeboat, each of the survivors represents a different side of belief. You've got, like, the super devout believer who never wavers. Then there's the total skeptic who just thinks the stranger showing up is just a coincidence. And then you have the people in between, wrestling with doubt and holding on to hope. It made me think about how, like, our own past experiences really shape how we react in a crisis. Do we lean on those ingrained beliefs? Or do those beliefs get challenged and maybe even redefined by what we go through? And this is where it gets even more interesting. Like, as the survivors are interacting with this stranger, their relationships with each other start to change too. Yeah, you start to see these alliances forming, and then suspicions pop up, and the lifeboat basically becomes like a mini version of society. They're all grappling with these big questions about trust and leadership and even like what truth really is. Albom actually talked about this on the Writer's Bone podcast. He said he got the inspiration for the book from real shipwreck survivors. Like, he was really struck by how often faith or the questioning of faith popped up in their stories. It's almost like when we're faced with death, we automatically search for something bigger than ourselves, something to help us understand the chaos. There's this one thing Albom said on that podcast that really stuck with me. He was talking about how he wanted to explore this idea that belief isn't always about easy answers. Sometimes it's more about embracing the mystery and sitting with the uncomfortable questions and letting our faith be challenged and reshaped by the tough times we go through. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want you to think about this for a second. If you were stuck on that lifeboat, facing those same uncertainties, how would your own beliefs guide you? Would they give you strength, or would they be a source of conflict? It's a pretty powerful question that goes way beyond the book itself. And it really gets at what it means to be human in a world that can feel unpredictable and kind of crazy sometimes. If you're looking for a book that will stay with you long after you finish it, I definitely recommend The Stranger in the Lifeboat. And to hear more from Albom himself, go check out that Writer's Bone podcast episode. He's got some super insightful stuff about his writing process and all those thought-provoking themes he's exploring in the book. Until next time, keep exploring. Keep those mighty habits going strong. And maybe take a minute to think about the mysteries of faith and survival.